with general updates. And so since it's just Rose and I in the shop here, I'm going to go to the screen. And first one on my list is Kelly and Harlan.
Hello. What would you? I'm trying to get things out of the way.
Yeah. So what generally with our general update is just who you are, what organization you represent, and anything related that you want to share with the group.
Sounds good. Well, I'm Kelly with Environmental Resource Solutions, and we pretty much support the Sonoma, Southern Mendocino area, and we also work into Napa and Lake when needed, and sometimes up in the Truckee Tahoe area because Mitch's family was from up there in the Auburn area. Been around in the Sebastopol area now for the last 7 years, and we were in Santa Rosa for the last 30 years basically, and then came out of Oakland, out of Hammond Jensen Wallen, which was a very old forestry firm that did aerial photography. So we have a lot of history in this office, in our back warehouse, and we're willing to share things with people. So if you need maps and those kinds of things, please feel free to ask us and we'll see if we can locate them and get them to you. I know Jason has asked us for things in the past.
Thank you, Kelly. Adriana, you're up next.
Sorry. Okay, thanks, Kim. Adriana Stagnero, Forestry Project Manager with the Goldridge RCD. And yeah, a couple updates from our end. Since Kelly's here, I feel like it's a perfect time to mention that the Goldridge RCD is going to be working with ERS on a VTP analysis for the majority of our Goldridge district in Western Sonoma County, at least the forested portion, and the excluding the coastal zone, because that's a little tricky to work in. But we're going to be doing a whole, I think it's about 40,000 acres of analysis to get us ready for funding and permitting forestry projects, wildfire resilience projects. So we're very excited about this. It'll be the first time that we've done a VTP in our district. We took the advice from our CAL FIRE partners to go big with this analysis, so that we can take advantage of it, get as much done at one time as possible. And we're also going to be applying to a CAL FIRE grant, which Jason Wells will tell more about. But one of the hopes is that the projects that happen within our district will be covered by that VTP and help streamline that whole permitting process. We'll still need to, the analysis that ERS is doing is kind of preliminary. It doesn't have all of the on the ground actual like surveying. We'll do that once we have specific projects that need surveying done, but it's a great first step in the right direction, and it'll help us just kind of expedite things in the future. So I'll just make that my update and pass the baton. Thanks, Kim.
Fantastic. That's 43,000 acres is the predicted area of treatment. So that's really exciting to see.
Oh, and I should say the county is helping fund that analysis. So thank you.
Yes, they are indeed. Thank you. All right. So Patty Aaron.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Patty Aaron. I'm the Community Engagement Specialist with Sonoma RCD. And we're putting together a number of workshops, and all those details will be coming out soon. In the meantime, the Good Fire Alliance is, and Pepperwood and our RCD are hosting 4 winter pile burn workshops, one on December 8th at Pepperwood, one on January 8th at Alliance Redwoods, January 18th at Pepperwood, and then February 8th at Bouverie. And I'll leave the rest of the updates for our RCD to Jason. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Patty. Joe Butler.
Good morning, Jill Butler, representing Gualala River Watershed Council. We had a good board meeting earlier this week and had Patty and Jason and Christine from Sonoma RCD join us, and we're discussing working together on a couple of workshops in the Gualala watershed. So we're excited about that. The other thing I wanted to mention was to just give a plug to the county for their chipper program, which apparently is running almost year round now. So they were out at our place. That must have been Wednesday. Is that right? Tuesday. It was before the rain started. And Chip, I had a 50-foot long slash pile and they chipped it in about 10 minutes. And they said they're taking signups for next year starting in January. So great program and very
Fantastic.
and so far we have had about 6 inches of rain where I am near Sebastopol, and I'm sure it's been double that up in the Guelph.
All right. Okay, this is a major storm, so everybody take their precautions. Thank you, Jill. How about Chris Carlson?
Hey there, Chris Carlson. I work for the land stewardship team with Sonoma Land Trust. I don't think I really have any updates that I'm not going to give in my Good Fire update in a few minutes.
That sounds good. Thanks, Chris. Is it Brian Miller? Sorry if I butchered your name.
No worries. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Bryn Miller. I am the new environmental planner at the Sonoma Ecology Center. I look forward to working with many of you in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Jason.
Had to make sure Jason Mills wasn't on that conversation. I feel like that happens every time. Yeah, right now, working on putting together a forest health grant for CAL FIRE. We're going to be working with Safer West County, Upper Mark West Watershed, Coast Ridge Community Forest, and the Northern Sonoma Fire Protection District, pulling in all kinds of different kinds of forest health related activities. So that's a big undertaking. Important to note, North Bay Forest Improvement Program, that contract has been signed. So Conservation Works, our partner there, they are the grantee, and we're hoping that we'll be able to start putting that whole thing together so that we can be getting work done again early next year. So that's the hope there. And I think those are probably like the really big updates. So we'll just kind of keep it there.
Thanks, Jason. Garrett.
Hey everybody, Garrett Gurdias, Training Programs Manager with Fire Forward. I'm going to give a little bit of an update later on, but burn season has concluded with this rain. So doing some refurb and inventory and stuff like that.
Okay, thanks, Garrett. And Erica?
Hey, Kim. The rain is coming down very hard where I am, so I'm gonna pass the mic to Garrett when we need to talk about fire forward things. I'm just glad to be here in good company and listen to you all.
All right, thanks for joining us. Tamara. Check. Not yet. Yeah. Anybody remember what code is for cell phone entrance?
Okay, here I am.
There you are. Good. Nice.
Sorry.
That's all right.
It's great to be here. Tamara Costa with Regenerative Forest Solutions. We have a lot going on right now, working on wrapping up our wood recovery and utilization feasibility study for OPR and CRP, with many folks on this call. Really grateful to the working group for coming together to help support this effort. Regenerative Forest Solutions is also working on the establishment of a wood utilization campus to serve Sonoma County. So that's in our plans, hopefully for 2025. We're hoping to realize the implementation part of this work. Hopefully some of you can join us on December 4th. We're having our final stakeholder session regarding the study, and we'll be presenting kind of our high-level executive summary of the different sections, which is really assessing all the potential for how utilizing wood might help foster more forest resilience work to get done in the county across its 513,000 acres. So we're excited about that. That's what we're working on right now. And just excited to be here with you all. Thank you for all your great work in the field, and reach out if you have any questions about the study or join us on December 4th. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Tamara. Ann Hamilton?
Hey y'all, Ann Hamilton with Greenbelt Alliance, North Bay Rep. I got no updates. Glad to be here.
All right, thank you, Ann. Joe Plugger.
Morning, folks. It's Joe Plugger, also with Sonoma Land Trust. Chris has the full update, so I'll just say that the only thing I'm putting on my Christmas wish list is a January burn window. So
Nice. All right, and Lynn Garrett?
Is it me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Lynn Garrick in the Upper Mark West Watershed. As Jason mentioned, we're working with RCD and Fire Safe Sonoma on a CAL FIRE planning grant. Jason's working on the VTPs for the fuel breaks that are outlined in that grant. So that's moving along well. We had our last community meeting with good participation, and it feels like we're ending on a high note. We're working on a St. Helena Road shaded fuel break for the vegetation management grant. And I think exciting is that we are making a video about how to organize both for funding and community participation in a shaded fuel grant. And that's going very well. It'll be available sometime after the year. What we're hoping is that other communities can use that to show before and after footage and landowner interviews to see what a shaded fuel break will look like so that they're not as afraid to participate. And it'll be useful for me the next time I need to do a project up here to show people the perspective of both the contractors and the landowners for how the work developed. And other than that, we had 8.4 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. It's a little heavier than usual for us up here. So we're kind of switching from burn season to ditch draining and ditch maintenance work. And I'll talk a little bit more about, along with other people, about what's been happening with burns up in the area when we get to that burn season share out.
All right, thank you. And Fred, Fred.
Hey there. I'm underwater in Occidental, and all I really can say is I'm looking forward to mushrooms this weekend and maybe some nice warm weather after this so that we can do a little burning after Thanksgiving of piles. And I'll leave it there.
All right, good morning, Ryan Klausch.
Hey everyone, Ryan Klausch, State Parks with Sonoma Mendocino Coast District. Broadcast burn season is definitely over for now. But we are going to get on a bunch of piles. We have a couple thousand piles we'll be working on while we have rain. Make it nice and easy, light them and walk away. And then we have a couple of forestry work projects that we have in line to do before bird season. So we're still working away, just different type of work.
All
I'll
right.
have a burn update later on.
That sounds great. Thank you, Ryan. Eric Shoes.
Howdy, y'all. Nice to see you. Eric Schuss from Sonoma Ecology Center. Recent happenings this last weekend, we had a nice training with North Bay Jobs with Justice. We worked at Montini Open Space Preserve and did some prescribed fire prep. And I'll have more updates a little bit later as well. And I'm coming to you from Amargosa Valley, just east of Death Valley. I was at the lowest spot in the continental US earlier today. So happy to join y'all.
All right, that sounds good. I don't think you're getting as much rain as we're getting. Let's go Stephen Swain.
Hey, sorry I'm not there with snacks. I did show up at 10 o'clock, but got the time wrong and thought, anyway, great communication on my part. Anyway, not a whole lot. I think I gave you guys a decent update last time. I'm working on some disease issues and some other things like that. And the drive back down here in the rain was exciting.
Yeah, indeed, right. All right, thanks, Stephen. Robert Aguero.
Morning, everyone. Robert Aguero with Permit Sonoma. I think the biggest update from Permit Sonoma's end is last Thursday, the Coastal Commission approved our local coastal plan with some minor revisions. And so the next steps will be for the Board of Supervisors to readopt that revised plan. That's likely going to be first quarter of next year when that happens. And so that includes, some streamlined policies for vegetation management, or, easier permitting pathways, or hopefully just exemptions and exceptions for a lot of the work that gets done out on the coast.
That's huge, Robert. Thanks for sharing that. The commission also approved the Estero Americano public access route. So that was really exciting too. So, but that was a big meeting. So next we have Leslie Scott.
Oh, hi, good morning. This is Leslie Scott. I'm representing WRA Landscape Restoration. We just wanted to hear about the fall burn season sharing and what everybody's working on. So thanks for having me.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Ari DeMarco.
Hi, I'm Ari DeMarco. I'm a project manager with Sonoma RCD. Yeah, mostly just here to listen in on the agenda items, and I don't have any updates beyond what Jason and Patty have got.
Okay, thank you. Shay Hopkins.
Hey y'all, Shay with Pepperwood. We were able to have a successful CAL FIRE lead burn a couple weeks ago. They burned about 40 acres, and it actually coincided with our first big learn and burn day. So we were able to get participants to come out and watch CAL FIRE in action in the morning, which was super cool. And then we got to burn some piles with them. And then we hosted an S212 earlier this week with North Bay Jobs for Justice. And I'm glad they were able to get out and get some training in before the torrential downpours. So yeah, I think Devin's going to be joining later to give some more updates for y'all.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. Marshall Tuberville.
Good. Is working for the Battalion Chief CAL FIRE in Sonoma County. Sonoma Gap beginning. Today, I think to talk about burning. Will be burned. Help burn. That's it.
Okay, that sounds good. Your audio is not so good, so maybe you can adjust when you present. Let me see. I think down to Rose Antaki. Do you all have an update today?
Let's see. Mostly in the last few days, I've been getting some details settled in on 2 upcoming workshops for part of our Resilient Forest and Watershed series that are going to focus on grazing. And one is going to be a webinar in late January that's really targeted towards cities and municipalities who are interested in creating a grazing program. And using the city of Petaluma as an example case study. So they're going to be talking to us about their program. And then late March, we're going to have an in-person workshop with the Laguna Foundation, talking more about co-op grazing and hiring contract grazers for targeted grazing. So more details to come on those.
Fantastic. And again, also reporting out on the wildfire resilience, our resilient forest and world wild. Sorry, I created the program. Don't even know the name. The resilient forest and watersheds workshop series. We are starting to plan out a workforce development workshop series, working with Conservation Corps North Bay, Circuit Riders, Resilient Works, to try to design a workshop series that really have a good impact on those different labor sources so that they can up their game and be able to be competitive with other vegetation management services. We hope to do that in probably February or March, depending on the availability of folks on this webinar. So I want to kind of give you an early update on that. We also have a pending workshop for the east part of the county. We had a very successful event hosted at Oddfellows a couple of weeks ago. I think we reported out on that. And we're going to replicate that event in the Sonoma Valley area, where we'll focus more on an oak woodland system and try to do something similar where we get a chance to visit different types of fuel treatments in that type of landscape so that we get a better sense of the types of challenges people have had either post-fire landscapes or practices that are trying to prevent wildfire in the future. So stay tuned to that. Again, that will be focused on landowners, so we get folks out on the ground to understand and have a good, healthy dialogue about the different fuel treatments that are available. So stay tuned on that. So with that, we'll move on to our principal agenda item, which is the fall burn season share out. What we're hoping is to have local communities and organizations share out about their fall burn season. It got a little skewed with the issues with vineyards and a desire to postpone that burn season until all the harvest was completed. So I want to kind of open the dialogue in the order of the Fire Forward first, and then Pepperwood, Sonoma Land Trust, CAL FIRE, state parks, and regional parks. So we'll go in that order. I'm assuming that we'll start with Garrett as part of the Fire Forward program. Thanks, Garrett.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so that's been our strategy, is just to wait until the grapes are definitely pulled. We make contacts with vineyards around our burn units just to make sure that they are done gone before we burn, so we can avoid any issues. So this year with our burns, obviously we're trying to get fire on the ground, but we're also trying to organize high impact burns, provide training opportunities and further scientific research. So some of our burns had some research being done, and I'll talk about that. Stats for the year, just in the fall, we had 94.7 acres burned. Those are Fire Forward lead burns. And then 318 acres about that we supported. We burned in Sonoma Valley, the Marin Coast, Upper Mark West Watershed, Sonoma Coast, and Lake County. So we burned on Cypress Grove and Martin Griffin Preserve, HDR preserves, for a total of 15 acres, coastal prairie restoration. And then we burned Bouverie Preserve, Glen Oaks Ranch, and Oak Hill Farm, where Peter Nelson and Tony Marks Block have an indigenous ecology research project out there where they're testing prescribed fire impacts to acorns and the weevils. And then a couple other burns, and then Monan's Rill, Santa Rosa with the Carlson. It was 7.4 acres, oak woodland, grassland restoration. It was also the first bilingual burn in the region, partnered with North Bay Jobs with Justice, resulted in Thea becoming a certified burn boss. And then there's also a KQED story that was posted. Erica just shared it in the chat. Supported burns with CAL FIRE, state parks, regional parks, and Terra. Some more numbers here. We had 107 members of the Good Fire Alliance on our burns. Worked with 8 different fire programs, including state parks, regional parks, land paths, SRJC, Terra, Marin, Water, East Bay Regional Parks, and then 6 different fire agencies. And then all of that, included in all of that, we have 9 new state certified burn bosses. Any questions?
Fantastic. Thanks, Garrett. That's really great news. Yeah, you guys must be exhausted.
I'm tired.
Have you been able to calculate the number of acres you were able to treat?
Yeah, so it was 94.7 just this
Nice.
fall.
Fantastic.
I think Lynn wanted to say something about the Monan's Rill burn.
I was just going to say from the landowner perspective, the Monan's Rill burn was new for me. I had seen a prescribed burn in a forest area, and that was kind of my perspective, is like prescribed burns, you find your anchor routes and you put them in the forest. But they did theirs in grassland. It was first grassland fire. And it came right up to within 5 feet of the houses. So I think for a number of landowners, it was very fascinating to see what you could do with grasslands around your houses. It was super well organized, so everyone felt very reassured. It was very non-dramatic. It was really, and I went with some real fire skeptics who were kind of like the show me people, and they got shown and they came away saying, I had no idea that it would be this calm, that even in grasslands, the flames would be this low. And it was fortunate that there were so many people working on that burn that we got to have some of the fire forward people with us, with the observers, who were really helpful in explaining what was going on. So from a landowner perspective, I would just say the more you can share with your communities when these things are happening, the better the results. And this one was very well announced to the community. I think it was, I'm sure it doesn't happen this way all the time, but it just so happened that the smoke went up and then dissipated, so nobody got smoke in their backyards. It was really successful for our community as a whole.
That's a great comment, and I think it's really critical in an area that was burned during the glass fire, that there's a lot of PTSD from something like that. And so to get folks on the ground, to see that, to experience it, and it's a huge degree of therapy for us as a county. So I totally appreciate that, Lynn. Thank you. All right, Garrett, do you have anything else you wanted to share?
No, I just wanted to pitch again. Please listen to that KQED story. It's like 4 minutes. It's really good.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you for that plug. Looks like Devin, you're next for Pepperwood.
Cool. I got a slideshow I think I'm gonna try and do here. Can I share my screen?
I think you can. There you go.
All right. Let me just put it in present mode. How do I do this? Format, slide. No. View. There we go. Slideshow. All right. Can everyone see this?
That sounds good. Why don't you go, maybe move your bar down. Can you do that at all?
Got it. There we go.
Perfect.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so I just threw this together really quick, so it's a little bit sloppy, but so yeah, just how we're using fire at Pepperwood. So who's actually doing the burning at Pepperwood? Talk a little bit about fires for fuels reduction, fire to kind of suppress some of the plants that we don't necessarily want, fire to promote some of the plants we do want, supporting cultural fire, providing educational opportunities, and just like a really quick look at our past year of how we've been using fire at Pepperwood. So who's actually putting fire on the ground at Pepperwood? So I think we have a really great partnership with CAL FIRE through our vegetation management plan or vegetation treatment plan, VMP or VTP. And so that's one option we have with Pepperwood, and we usually use CAL FIRE as our partner for some really big burns that are maybe beyond the capacity of the Good Fire Alliance or my kind of capacity is leading some of these burns. So one great example, I think, we did a 100-acre burn and it was led by Marshall Tuberville, and there was a potential spot at that, and Marshall was able to call a helicopter, fly it around. No spot actually ended up happening, but just kind of the resource capacity that some of these larger burns take, it's really nice to have the option to partner with CAL FIRE to kind of take the lead on some of the burns. And then alternatively, I'll kind of lead some of these burns with support of the Good Fire Alliance and huge support of Fire Forward team, and then just countless other partners that have really joined in on the Good Fire Alliance and just kind of this our prescribed burn community. And then we also do some cultural burning, kind of where I'll work closely with our Native Advisory Council with some support from some outside partners as well. And I'll talk a little bit more about all of those kind of. All right, so a little bit about burning for fuels reduction is really kind of a big focus of ours. Our forests are overstocked and we have tons of fuel, especially being in the footprint of both the Kincaid fire and the Tubbs fire. So on the left, these two pictures This one over here is after our treatment. We'd go through and do fuels management, mechanical, and we do a kind of lop and scatter treatment and spread that kind of across the forest, and then follow up with the broadcast burn. And you can see kind of the picture below that. This one here is right as the broadcast burn is kind of going through there. And one thing we're kind of starting to notice is that we aren't necessarily getting quite the fuels reduction that we want when we do this type of treatment. It definitely gets a good amount of fuels reduction, but a lot of the heavier fuels, the 1,000 and 100-hour fuels, are kind of left behind. And I think this photo does a really good job of an example. You can see kind of in this bottom corner, some of these heavier logs are still remaining there, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We've definitely been able to reduce the fuel loading and a lot of the fine fuels that would maybe carry those wildfires. So we're heavily reducing the fuels that way. But we've been noticing alternative ways actually had better success at reducing the fuel loads. It's a lot more expensive to implement the treatment, and then it takes a lot more time and energy. But we've been actually placing that fuel into piles and then burning the piles. And that has allowed us to get the fuels reduction closer to kind of what we want. There's a ton of ecological and other benefits that kind of go with these broadcast burns, but when we're just thinking about fuels reduction as our main goal, we've had more success with pile burning. A lot more expensive, a lot more labor intensive. So there's a lot of trade-offs that kind of go with it. But both have shown a lot of success in being able to reduce our fuels. Oh, come on. Now you okay. What the heck? Sorry. Now using fire to knock back what we don't want. So mainly invasive species. The main kind of way we've been doing this is through our spring burns right up here. And really with these spring burns, we're able to target specific annual grasses, especially late season annual grasses. Medusa head, barbed goat grass are the two targets that we've had, and we've had really good success with these burns across large landscapes. And really what we're aiming for is targeting these burns so that that annual grass seed is at not quite fully ripe, but it's starting to mature and it's still hanging on the plant. And when the fire comes through, it actually ruptures that seed because there's still some moisture in there, not allowing that seed to germinate for the next year. We've seen like 99% reduction in some of our areas that we've done this. So really great success at getting those late season annual grasses. We've also kind of been playing around with a lot smaller scale early spring burning, where we're actually targeting, or even winter burning, where we're targeting the annual grasses when they're starting to germinate. So those grasses are in their cotyledon stage, which they're really vulnerable at that stage. They haven't been able to photosynthesize, really haven't been able to set a root structure down. So the fire is able actually to kill those annual grasses and not let them germinate again because they haven't been able to build up the root structure. So that's a good example of this over here on the upper right-hand corner. And you can see there's like little green grasses coming up, and that kind of early spring, late winter burn is actually able to kind of carry through there and kill off a lot of those grasses. And yes, I wanted to show this picture of burning up close to my house because, as Lynn mentioned before, it actually can be done really safely in a controlled manner. So I actually saw a lot of really good success in this burn. It was maybe 100 feet by 100 feet when it was all said and done. And what I've been finding with this style burning is the window is not really reliable because you need this time where you get moisture, grass starts to green up, and then you get a drying period so it's warm enough to burn, and then you have enough thatch that actually will carry the fire. So I'm finding it challenging to get that specific conditions right where that burning can be successful, but when it happens, it can show a lot of success. And one thing I like about that style burning is all the annual grass seeds kind of germinate around the same time. So I'm not just targeting the Medusa head and the barb goat grass, but I'm actually able to target a lot of the annual grasses, such as, wild oats, some of the non-native bromus species. So it's actually able to target a larger range of annual grasses. And then another way we're kind of using fire to suppress kind of what we don't want is actually using pile burning to place piles specifically on the species that we don't. We've been doing that a lot with harding grass. It's, we're doing it in a 5 by 5 foot section area. So it's not necessarily able to scale across a long landscape. But we've had a lot of good success. We're able to put this hot pile right on top of what you don't want. And then we've been following up that with plugging grass plugs. So in these next 2 sections, we've been able to reduce that little 5 foot by 5 foot area of the species we don't want, and then go ahead and put in native perennial grasses. And we've seen a lot of success that way. So even though it's not covering a lot of land, we're doing small little kind of islands of conversion of species we don't want to native perennial grasses, the species we do want. And then kind of fire to promote what we want. So Cal, as we all know, in this, I'm speaking to the choir, I guess, or singing to the choir, that California ecology is really adapted for fire. So a lot of the species actually really reliant on fire as a way to help them germinate or kind of encourage their growth. So we've been doing this mostly in the fall. So areas that have already had their fuels reduction, the main objective of these goals is not necessarily to reduce fuel, but it's just to kind of reintroduce the natural process of fire across our landscape in a much slower kind of way. And that's the picture on the left. And we were talking about Thea, and there she is. She was out. Moan Israel has been a huge supporter of our program as well. So, and then on the right-hand side is a picture of some of the kind of like late fall, early winter jackpot burns that we have done, where maybe the conditions aren't right that the fire is going to carry really far, but in areas that we have heavy kind of fuel loading, we just kind of push it together. Don't make necessarily neat piles. Try to burn that off, especially in areas around some of the species that we do want to promote. And so you can kind of see up right here, I captured it a little bit, but this is a black oak, which is one of the species that we really do. So trying to use smoke and release some nutrients around some of that black oaks. And the nice thing with that is some of the logistics around putting fire on the ground in some of those early winter just makes the logistics a little bit easier. But you can see all the areas where the fire didn't go. It didn't really carry. It just kind of was able to burn in certain areas where there was enough fuel to carry that. Next, we work with our Native Advisory Council to kind of support cultural burning, and that really can mean a lot of different things. It's really just supporting what our Native Advisory Council's objectives are and kind of in the way we want to. So in this left-hand picture is Clint McKay doing burning underneath a black oak tree to kind of help promote black oak acorn and the health of the black oaks and help with acorn collection. And then this upper right hand is right after one of those burns, and you can kind of see just the after effects, really small, really just talking about around the bases of a lot of the oak trees. So maybe like 3 oak trees, or sometimes even just one individual oak tree. So maybe 50 foot by 50 foot. We've also worked with our Native Advisory Council to use fire in grasslands to kind of help promote some of the species that are have significance to the WAPO community in our grasslands. And that's typically done in the fall. And most of the burning we've done with the Native Advisory Council have kind of been in the fall to help promote some of the species that they have interest in. Then next, we've just a little bit about some of the educational opportunities that Pepperwood provides around fire. So pile burning workshops. So usually we'll offer 2 pile burning workshops at Pepperwood in the winter. And then the last 2 years, I've actually gone out and to other communities. This year I was with Kelly out at Oddfellows, providing a hands-on pile burn workshop for that community. And it's something we're kind of playing with. And really, I think the model that's working well for me and Pepperwood is that if a community has piles ready to go and they're able to organize and bring a group together, that makes it worth my time to kind of go out there. I'll go out there, provide a 1-day hands-on burning kind of opportunity, talk about the logistics of pile burning, the permits needed, and hopefully try and build that community's comfortability with fire so that they can then go, hey, you know what, I could burn a pile on my own, and maybe call my couple neighbors and do it comfortably. And so I've done that both out at Oddfellows and out at the Coast Ridge Community Forest at Judy Rosales' daughter's house. And so if you're interested in that, or you have communities that are interested in that, I think it's something I'm willing to kind of discuss. And I think if that community's willing to put some energy and effort into it, I think I'm also willing to put energy and effort into it. We also offer forest stewardship workshops. We actually have one coming up on Saturday. I always post all these opportunities in the Sonoma County Forest Working Group, a listserv. And that's usually offered in the fall. Sometimes if there's a lot of demand, we'll offer one in the spring as well. We also offer a grassland stewardship workshop, and that's usually one a year at Pepperwood in the spring. And both of those workshops really focus heavily on how we're stewarding with fire, because we believe that is our biggest tool to steward large landscapes. And it's really the only way we can kind of do it at scale. We also work with SRJC, UC Berkeley, Sonoma State to kind of provide field trips and get students out here and try and give them hands-on opportunity, or just kind of field trip opportunities. And then lastly, I'm really excited about the Learn and Burn days. I'm not sure I posted it about on the workshop, and I like to call this my work in progress year. And it's 3 days a month from November to March. And really the idea is to provide hands-on opportunities for people to kind of come out, learn with some people that maybe have some more experience, provide their insight, but really just kind of try to create a melting pot of information sharing and hopefully some burning opportunities, but also a lot of learning opportunities. And what I've kind of heard from some of the communities is some of the fire opportunities that come up are really last minute, generally on weekdays. So it's really hard to fit into a lot of people's schedule. And my idea was that I would provide regularly set times in the calendar. And instead of the date being variable with what the project is, I'd keep the date consistent, and then that project will be variable. So not on every Learn and Burn day will we have the chance to put fire down, but I'm hopeful that a lot of them we will. And we've had 2 pretty successful ones, and then we actually were supposed to have one today, but given the conditions out there, we did end up canceling it just for safety, and I don't think anybody really wants to be in the field in the current condition. So there's about 15 a year. This is my first year doing it. I'm really open to feedback, hoping to pull in a lot of partners. And my dream is that, and I've been talking to Joe at Sonoma Land Trust and other people about maybe hosting some of these Learn and Burn days off Pepperwood site. And I think that's what my dream is, that maybe this is a roaming opportunity throughout the county to kind of highlight a lot of the cool projects that are going on in the county, while also just providing great learning opportunities for everybody. And then just a little bit looking back at the last 12 months. So you saw some of those pictures of the burning underneath the oak trees, and it was a really awesome day out. And Clint McKay had kind of mentioned that this was the first time that the WAPO people had been able to burn under black oak trees specific for acorn collection, the first time in 7 generations at Pepperwood. So that was really special, and we hope to kind of continue to build on that. We've burnt over 2,000 burn piles, not this winter, but kind of going back into the last 12 months. We just started burning piles again, and that spanned across 70 acres. We also just completed a 40-acre prescribed burn with CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE was the lead on it, and it was really nice to get that burn done. This was the fourth year we've attempted to do that, but because of smoke tank concerns by vineyards, some of early rains that kind of shut it down. It was very nice to get that burn done after so many years of attempting. And I think it's good to get those wins to just kind of keep your motivation going so you're not too defeated. We've offered over 15 different learning opportunities for people to come out, burnt over 5+ acres of annual grass reduction burns, and then about 10+ acres of jackpot burning. All right, that's what I got.
All right, can you guys hear me? That was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much, Devin. We really appreciate you sharing that information. In the interest of time, let's go with just a couple of questions. If anybody has something specific they want to ask Devin. That was very comprehensive. Thanks, Devin. Really appreciate it. All right, now we're going to Chris Carlson from Sonoma Land Trust. And you're welcome to share your screen, Chris, or if you want to just to speak, we're all ears.
Yeah, I think I'm going to share for Chris.
Oh,
if
okay,
you still
great.
want to go with that method.
Chris, you good with that? You want to share?
Yeah.
Or do you want to?
Yeah, I would love if Rose would share. Just facing some limited bandwidth issues here at home, and so didn't want that to get in the way.
Okay.
So yeah, and I'll try to speak. To lessons learned, but of course, Sonoma Land Trust, we have preserves across the county, but absolutely depend on partnerships with Good Fire Alliance, friends at Fire Forward, CAL FIRE, and almost too many people to name for fear of leaving anyone out. You can go ahead and flip to the next slide. So I'm going to give you just a couple updates on burn projects and a little bit of related forest health work that we're doing. Kind of chronologically, on the 28th of October, we were able to burn 22 acres at Glen Oaks and Brewery Preserve. It was very much a partnership burn with Audubon Canyon Ranch and their Fire Forward program. Ecology, animals, nothing cares about property boundaries. And so it's really heartening to be able to kind of work across and manage this as a landscape rather than have false boundaries and management units. And I believe at some point, Rose, maybe at the end, you could just play those couple little video clips I sent links to as well. But for now, let's flip to the next page. That burn was about 22 acres. Most of it was oak savanna. So burning that for all the normal reasons, but there was also 5 acres of kind of oak forest with a bay problem, as I like to call it. The type of forest that's seen intense fire every 35 to 40 years, which really favors bays over oaks. And so we've done a project there where we've gone in and thinned the fire damaged bays and pile burned them, partly to be a good neighbor because a lot of Bouveries buildings are right across the fence line from that unit, but also to restore this oak forest. And I guess I'm feeling that it's a little bit of an uphill battle to restore these, oak forests that are already departed in terms of bay. Partly just at the end of the fall when we're doing these burns, the logs and the dead wood, especially where an oak tree is wounded, are still really critically dry inside. And so bringing fire in at enough intensity to make a difference, knocking back the bay, also exposes those wounded oaks to fire inside them. So it's a little bit of a delicate balance of getting enough intensity to burn the bays, but not too much to burn the oaks. And that's just something I've been thinking about as we move forward in terms of management energy and potential to kind of move the needle versus just tread water with where we're at. And I guess that the bottom right photo shows a bay that had had a big pile burn piled on top of it. It burned out the former core of the tree, but there's still resprouts around the edge of it. You just really can't kill those things with fire. I guess the next slide. In the next burn, 2 days after, we also did, in partnership with Fire Forward, acting as burn boss. I think it was Paul Sokolowski on that one and Brian Peterson, and then our staff member, Joe Plogger, acting as burn boss trainee. I was really excited about this burn. This property has beautiful wildflowers in intact grasslands in a way that a lot of properties don't. So just the prospect of bringing good fire back where there's intact vegetation to respond and increase is really exciting to me. We acquired this property just a year and a half ago in partnership with Ag and Open Space, many other partners, and we're planning on being interim owners, but one of the roles we're playing is getting some of these management activities like invasive work, good fire, and water work going before we hand it over to a public parks agency. I don't want to, I don't want to spoil anybody's workday, but there's Jen Stanfield and Monica Del Martini giving little cheers of their drip torches as they close that unit. Next slide. I guess project goals for this were just stewarding the oak woodland and really native dominated grassland, which we all know buildup of thatch is an issue for. But also, starting to clean up some of that dead wood that resulted from the fires 7 years ago at this point. Next slide. To pivot a little bit out of Sonoma Valley to the coast. This is on our Pole and Little Black Mountain preserves. I'm sorry. So this work has been funded by the State Coastal Conservancy. And really, this property last burned 50 years ago after heavy logging, and then it was replanted with Doug fir, incense cedar, ponderosa, and redwood. A lot of those that don't grow in that area, or at least not in the densities that they were replanted at. And so the project goals for this, we're trying to move a little bit away from treating every acre of forest before we put good fire in it, but rather kind of investing in the perimeters of burn units so that we can restore that process of fire, but also to take this grant opportunity to do things that chainsaws can do, but broadcast fire can't, which are some more of those like structural restoration elements. And to me, it's things like conifer removal. Once the bark has gotten too thick to be hurt by fire, girdling them and intentionally lopping and scattering to increase fire severity in the areas you want it. And hey, buddy, I'm giving a presentation right now. I'll come give you a snack in a second. Sorry. I guess, yeah, next slide, just to flip to the map of the project. So we're starting to piece together basically management units across the coast to serve the dual purpose of, bringing good fire back to the land for all the good reasons, but also to act as this zone of reduced fuels in coordination with our partners at Jenner Headlands and all the other projects that CAL FIRE is working at in this area. So next slide. And this year we were successfully able to treat about 20 acres using chainsaws. A lot of it focused on oak forest health, but 6.5 acres of it focused on building those big burn perimeters. And then just last week, CAL FIRE committed 20 guys for 2 days to help us get about 2,000 piles burned, which was great, perfect timing. We have a VTP on that property, so we also had a variety of activities related to the VTP. And I guess I would note that one of them, during the cultural resource survey, they found old cabin homestead that of course is a historic building, but we went through a second phase of historic resource analysis with our contractor to determine if it was a protected historic resource that qualified under CEQA as something that we needed to avoid during treatments, or if it was just an old building, an old property. So I'd be happy to chat further with folks if they have interest in that. Some lessons learned from that project: covering your piles with forestry paper gives you a lot of flexibility in getting piles burnt. And then I think the verdict is still out about girdling, but I'm really excited about it as an opportunity to do some of the forest health work, but saving time, carbon, avoiding surface fuel loading and burn piling, and potentially creating wildlife habitat kind of in the process of doing this work. And then the final, next slide, burn I just want to give a little bit of update on is, it's not a fall burn, but we did about 1/10 of an acre burning at our Pitkin Marsh property this spring. And the folks at the Laguna Foundation have been monitoring the outcomes of that patch burn in the meantime. And they found that that time burn was really great at setting back the tall fescue, which is a really problematic non-native grass out there for some of our rare natives. But it did not, that timing didn't work as well with the velvet grass. And they thought that maybe burning in the fall to expose those resprouts to cold winter temperatures would be a better technique. And so just want to share out those lessons learned about tall fescue and velvet grass. And then finally, on the communications page, I just wanted to say that Watch Duty, being accepted as an external reporter on Watch Duty, has opened up some great possibilities in terms of communicating with the public and also documenting our activities and steps taken kind of in a public record. And so I've been working with Erica Lutz at Fire Forward to kind of hone our language and use of Watch Duty as a communication tool. And it's great because it has a permalink that you can share with neighbors and people can click on for updates, even though it doesn't give you push notifications by default. And I guess with that, I'll wrap it up. And I sent Rose over just 2 video clips of some good fire on the ground that I thought folks might want to see.
Fantastic. We'll try to get those to roll. Hang on 2 seconds. Thanks, Chris. We really appreciate that presentation and being able to hear what you guys are up to.
Yeah, happy to share. Take questions offline. And again, couldn't be more happy with the partners that we have available. So this is at the Vernal Pools property. I thought it was just a really great example of backing low intensity fire. This area in the spring just has amazing owls, clover, and just Xanthonia oatgrass kind of wet meadow. And I'm really excited to see the flowers pop up in this meadow in the spring. It was a little bit hairier in the oaks. And then this is at the Glen Oaks Brewery burn. First thing in the morning, we were having a little bit of, you can see there's a slope up, but there was a downslope wind at times that was overriding the slope. So it was a little bit of a tricky start with this burn because the fire was burning downhill with the wind instead of uphill. But this just shows a strip being pulled across to kind of, you could wait all day for the backing fire to burn down the slope, but we often use strips of fire to speed up the process and provide a little bit more control. Anyway, just wanted to provide some visuals. Since we're talking about fire, it's fun to look at fire.
You just made everybody's day. We get to cozy up to a nice fire today. Perfect. All right. Do we have any questions from folks on Chris's presentation? Raise your hand or go ahead and speak out. I really like the diversity of projects you guys were able to work on, from the coastal area to Sonoma Valley and even a wetland area. So really appreciate you sharing those. I'm really excited to see the vernal pools next spring. That should be ridiculous. Go ahead, Adriana.
Yeah, Chris, could you just very quickly tell us a little bit about the fire ecology of vernal pools?
I'm probably not qualified to speak to it. I guess, vernal pools, I think the ecology is typified by the really late wet period that doesn't allow, ideally, much to grow in there. Like all the native vernal pool things are really these short statured small things. They don't mind that fire burns through them, I would say in general. I think the one thing that can happen though is with grass invasion into vernal pools, especially perennial grass invasion, that can start to change the fire ecology so that it's not a light, fast burn across. If you start to get those thatchy things, it can really like toast the seeds and have fire intensity that isn't good.
And just to clarify, we didn't actually burn the pools themselves this year. They burned in 2017, and I'm sure they've burned many times over their thousands of years of existence, but we're potentially going to do that in the future. Just didn't make sense for where we're at with the research and all that. There are some species of concern that we wouldn't want to just willy-nilly run fire through.
And probably critical to that you mentioned in your presentation was that largely to get rid of all that thatch that built up for many years without treatment. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean the pools are in pretty good shape themselves, so they're not as big of a problem as the rest of the property.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Joe and Chris. We appreciate that. Next, we'll go to Ryan Klausch for his presentation.
All right, I'm going to share real quick. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. I tried to throw a bunch of pictures in here, so it's more of a picture slideshow, but I have some things to talk about. So I'll just get started. So we had 3 broadcast burns for the most part. We started with an early one in September. This was Willow Quarry RX out in Sonoma Coast State Park. Highly visible. You can see it from the intersection of Highway 116 and Highway 1. It was a great project. We partnered with 3 other parks districts. So they came from outside of our parks district. Regional Parks, Fire Forward, Monterey Fire, Sonoma County Fire, and CAL FIRE. Probably someone else that I've forgotten as well. But this highlighted a lot of our issues that we have with trying to burn on the coast because we had quite a foggy August, which I think everyone who lived on the coast understands that, but interior, it's still middle of fire season, still plenty hot. And so when we're trying to burn out on the coast, people's feelers are still very sensitive to both fire and where we're at during the season. But often on the coast, we're dealing with moistures that are higher, or we're at a seasonal phenology where we need to burn sooner than later. So if we tried to burn a couple weeks ago, it might not have had the same effects as if we burned in September as we did. And forgive me for using the words positive and negatives. I understand, but I just made this presentation today, so take that with a grain of salt. But the big thing we had out here was that we got to burn some highly encroached coastal prairie that had, in some places, 12-foot tall coyote brush. We had a lot of Douglas fir in places that typically would have coastal prairie and would have been burned or grazed by native grazers. So there's a lot of places that need to be disturbed in some level. And so this place was a really good place to get it done, especially on the coast. Here was especially cool with the wildlife response because being so close to the mouth of the Russian River And being in a really coastal place meant there's a lot of wildlife, a lot of habitat. And so once we did burn it, the response was pretty amazing to watch. We had night patrols for several nights, and so we saw a lot of wildlife coming in to respond to the fire and do a little bit of foraging. This picture here is a burrowing owl, which state, I'm trying to remember, I think it's about to be upgraded to threatened statewide, but is a species of special concern. And they showed up the night after the burn, and they were sitting on the control line looking for animals coming in and out of the burn unit. So they were like watching in the bear area. And burrowing owls typically like bear areas already, but I think a lot of the wildlife response that gets focused on is negative. And so I just want to show that there are some positive responses and that the wildlife are adapted to fire just as much as the vegetation. And as a wildlife ecologist, that's something I like to highlight here. We also have the endangered Myrtle's silver spot butterfly, which we had included some of their habitat in the burning originally, and then we found an individual that was using it. And so we had to avoid that area because of the regulations. And so we avoided that area, but we're excited to expand the area where they were not, and hopefully they'll be able to move into these places. And we're hoping to work with Fish and Wildlife on allowing us to burn within their habitat. But that's a slow process. Also, it was a really, really good experiment in terms of just using broadcast burning in coastal firs versus the high cost and high time required to cut, pile, and burn Douglas fir, especially on the coast, where they're very thick and takes a long time to remove. And then, of course, also burning during fire season. Marshall will probably touch on this too, but we're always trying to burn at the best possible time. And so we were able to pull this off in the middle of fire season and do it safely in terms of keeping it contained. And some of the negatives, if anyone was in the Russian River Valley that day, it was definitely very smoky. And I will touch on that based off of, because during fire season, we're often leading towards burning during wetter conditions or cooler conditions. Those are often the same conditions where smoke wants to sit on the surface and not provide good lift. And so if we try to play it safe at all times, we're also exposing ourselves to more opportunities of smoke impacts. So there's this balance that we're trying to pull where we'd like it to burn well and not avoid, and to avoid smoke impacts. But at the same time, we want to keep fires contained. So as always, fire is difficult. But that's something we're learning, especially is if we're leaning towards cooler conditions, we have other issues that come with that. And this one, we put out a press release. We tried our best to get public awareness out there. But also being in a very highly visible place meant that people driving by on the highway they just saw it, thought it was a wildfire. And so we got a lot of false alarm calls, both the day of and both the day after. It was difficult to manage and I think very frustrating for the dispatch, but we did what we could. It was on watch duty. And on top of that, a couple of our signs for prescribed fire were stolen. And so that probably added to the level of issues where public didn't know what was going on. That is the risk you run when you have a sign on Highway 1. Because you have a lot of people from out of town that see a sign that says prescribed fire and think it's cool or funny, and they want to put it in their garage. That's my only thought, that's why it's being stolen. And then because it is early in the season, we have an unknown impact to grapes. Up there's not a lot of vineyards, but still it's a concern and always something that we have to manage. On the coast, we're fortunate enough that we're not in Sonoma Valley or Napa Valley. So we're able to see if we can move forward with these things and hopefully nothing happens. But the grape thing is always an issue. Here's a view from across the river. And post-burn with the beautiful fog rolling in. Nice mosaic. And then we had the Upper Prairie burn, which we've done, I think this is the 4th time in over, I think it was 5 or 6 years. So 2 to 1 years in between burns. it is coastal prairie, so it's grass and likes fire. So we're happy to do it in that interval and maintain that and expand it. This one was mostly because we were burning adjacently in the forest, and so we wanted to remove any flashy fuels that if a ember crossed over into the grass, we wouldn't have to deal with it. It was all black, so it was a nice big control line. And again, this was a good project with a lot of different districts and Fire Forward and Cal Fire and Timber Co Fire. And it was a night burn directly following a red flag. And so I think it might have been the day after the red flag. Marsh can correct me. And that was my first burn boss assignment as a state certified burn boss. So that was exciting. And night burns are great because it allows us to burn when things are calmer, especially during dry periods. Again, it created a larger control line and continuing to maintain and expand that coastal prairie. And the negatives, not a whole lot, except knowing what we know now with all the rain we got is we just coulda, shoulda, woulda kept burning into the woods. It would have been great. But we're not all able to see into the future. So we're bummed out by that, but that's also the game we play. And a little bit more wildlife response. Here's a western meadowlark the next morning, checking out, burn unit. And American kestrel. Lots of birds of prey. Loving it. And then this is our big one this year. This is the Stockoff Complex off of Seaview Road at Salt Point State Park, where we previously did a shaded field break. And this was, I guess you could call it like 2 different weeks that we did work, but it was kind of an extended work project where in October we had received rain, so we were burning a bunch of piles, burning a bunch of anything that would really take at this point. So a lot of redwood clumps and stumps and things that we're trying to target based off of what would burn. And we're burning on the edge of the wet season. And the total acreage was 234 acres of coastal forest, but because of the way things burned, it definitely wasn't the full 234. But until we get a perimeter around it, we're going to say we touched maybe 150 acres of that 234, and it didn't fully burn, but we got a lot of the big stuff that we wanted to take care of. Which part of that is, I think, what Marshall and I and some other folks are calling softening the forest. And so you harden your house and you can soften the forest. And so you have things like stumps, jackpots, things that are going to burn really hot during a wildfire. If you can address those and remove those, you can have a safer interface between private property and the wildlands. And so we got a lot of the stumps, clumps, piles, redwoods, bishop pines were burning great. Thank you for pine needles. Pine needles are awesome. And also taking care of some weakened trees and control lines. So maybe it was an ideal first entry. We don't know. We did it, so I'm happy. But it's hard to tell with the wet season. It's a hard target to hit. And then these 2 pictures here. This is 2 of, as far as I know, the only old growth trees remaining in this unit. This is a nice big old growth chimney that now has a reiterated top. And then on the right is another nice old, probably a little bit younger, but it has a nice cavity in the bottom there. A lot of good wildlife features that we want to both create and maintain. And then, some of the negatives. Again, risks of waiting until the forest is wet. A lot of times as prescribed burners, we're told, well, it's too dry, we have to wait. And then we did exactly that. And here we are, and we're getting 13 inches of rain, and we're probably done for most of the season. And so we were waiting till we had a little bit of rain. And then you hit this period where you're hoping the forest dries out. And what I've always been told is after about 3 inches of rain, you can wait 10 days and the forest will burn again. But we never got 10 days. We were always getting 5 days and 1/10 of an inch, 5 days, 1/10 of an inch. And so you're kind of playing the whatever the rain gives you game. And it's frustrating, especially if it's not burning what you want to burn. But some places it did burn well. So here's an example of the redwood clumps carrying perfectly well. And also when you're waiting for it to get wet, you're having to use a lot of drip torch mix or fuel or whatever you're using to burn it, because instead of naturally carrying, you're having to encourage it to move by putting fire on the ground. And you get to a certain point where like we use too much, or we don't want to use that much, gasoline and diesel to burn things. And then lastly, because it is a forested environment, there's a lot of hazards out there, and our crew did experience a tree strike incident. We had to airlift them, and so there was a medical incident. So that adds another level of concern with burning in wet conditions, because we're having to move in and out of the same places over and over and over again, which meant that we're walking through places that had weakened trees. The person who was hit is doing okay, probably the best it could possibly be, but it could have went very differently in that case. So those are things that we're kind of ruminating on. Lastly, some pictures of the good work. Some places burned well, some places didn't, but we got some good fire effects going. Also, our redwoods would carry super well. And often, because up on sea view, you're above the inversion that often forms on the coast. So we're like about 1,000 feet up. Often it would be super dry even into the evening, because this was during that period where we had that rain and then a really dry period. So right around I think there's a red flag around that one as well. And so we had, I think, down to 30% relative humidity overnight. So we're able to get things burning. Okay. And that's what I got. More piles to go.
That's fantastic. Appreciate that. Thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate the kind of the candid remarks that you showed as far as the ability to just work with the weather and how it can be very frustrating at times. The question I had for you was relative to the treatment on the bishop cone or the bishop pine, and whether you were successful in reducing the amount of that huge stockpile of kind of how does the term is I don't want to say decrepit, but the senescent stage of the bishop pine is like, was that one of the main objectives, to try to remove some of that material?
So up there in that part of the forest, the pine it's senescent in some places, but it's not nearly as bad as it is closer to the coast, where it's kind of more of a monoculture of pine, right? Up on the ridge, it's more of a mixed forest interface. And so actually our goal up there, besides removing it from the prairie, which we want to keep as a prairie, we burned all the pines and hope that they will have a new generation of pines that come up and still have that mixed variety within the forest up there. It's kind of hard to see like where pine belongs on the coast. It's definitely expanded more on the terrace than it probably would have historically. But I think we want to retain it up top to a certain point. And then there's places up there where it's entirely pygmy forest or it's entirely coastal pine. So there's some places up there we'd like to treat. And it is definitely difficult to burn, because whenever I've burned it, it burns very hot and very intensely. And that's where like burning the grass was great, because we were burning all these pines and these pines were torching out. They were burning from top to bottom. It was, very wild and intense. But when there was nothing else to burn and all the rest of the forest wouldn't burn, it was the perfect time. So I think we're looking at trying to implement that in other places. If there is a dry period this winter, it might not be a bad idea to try to burn some of our pines further down south, because if anyone lives out there, they've seen the decline of the pines, and part of that is a lack of fire. And part of that is also pines being in places that they probably shouldn't be. So.
Right. Great. Anybody else have any questions?
Ryan, I just wanted to comment that your photography, whoever did that, was fantastic. So I know it's a little off topic, but that's pretty awesome pictures you guys had there.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that's mine and our crew and everybody. We like pictures. It shares the story way better than I could ever share it. So
Excellent job. Yeah, go ahead, Lynn.
Question, if I heard you correctly, you talked about burning 12-foot high coyote bush. And so I'm curious what was located around that, whether that was out in the middle of a large meadow or, and just about how it burned and what kind of safety factors that might imply.
Yes, so depending on where you were at, like not all of it was 12 foot high, but in the places where it was, we had to make a very wide control line. I think in some places it was up to 20 feet wide, which was mostly mowed, but we did have some bare mineral soil there. Um, and we were really grateful that it was that wide, because there were some times where if it did bend over, the flames were trying to reach the other side of the unit. So um, in some places it burned completely, so all that's left is burnt stems, and of course those will resprout. And then some places the coyote brush just shrugged it off and didn't burn whatsoever. If anyone's burned in coyote brush, it's kind of a tricky thing. It's either way too cool or way too hot, and there's no in between. And even if you burn super hot, it resprouts. So it's a very, very well adapted species to disturbance. I'm sure they evolved with mammoths stepping on it and ground sloths stepping on it. So fire's no big deal, I think.
Nice. Good. Any other questions from folks? All right. Thank you very much, Ryan. Really appreciate your presentation. Next, we have Brooke Edwards from Regional Parks. Welcome, Brooke.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for all the great presentations so far. It's great going towards the last because I think everyone's covered a lot of the ecological fuel reduction and even the communications venues that we've been using for prescribed fire. And I just want to say that, this community is really great with partnerships and sharing information. Each time we burn, we try to share what we've learned. And so I think this is a great forum for that. And thanks for, everyone that is moving this ball forward. Ryan, Devin, Chris, everyone out there that also allows us to partner with them and get out of the landscape in these different fuel sources to learn about it. So a lifetime of learning opportunities. So appreciate everyone for that. I don't have as much an in-depth presentation, but I do have some maps I can share with you. Let's see if I can fire this up and talk about some of the burns that we've done for regional parks. Let's see here. That would not be it. Screen 2, here we go. So we started off the season, hopefully everyone can see a map of Bouvary Wildflower Preserve. We started off the season partnering with Audubon Canyon Ranch. And most people don't know, but Regional Parks actually does have a Bouvary Wildflower Preserve that's right adjacent to ACR's Bouvary. And so on this map, you can see Bouvary is kind of over here to the northwest. And so we started off the day burning through these kind of oak woodland savannas. And then we ended up the day burning across the boundary and burning into a good portion of our preserve right adjacent to their preserve. And so I think we burned about 10 acres altogether of our wildflower preserve. To prep this fire, prescribed fire, we did some clearing of down and dead oaks material in the oak grove, just so that when we did put the prescribed fire in there, we weren't putting a lot of heat on the live trees and killing those trees. And so we would take that material, build burn piles, and burn those off. And then the control lines, for the most part, on this boundary were mow lines in the grasslands that we used. So we started off the year on that burn. And then we quickly moved over into our Tole Ranch property, which is a little bit closer down towards the southern Sonoma County, towards the Baylands areas. And we were able to burn off 150 acres of grassland. This was led by CAL FIRE, and we have a vegetation management plan with CAL FIRE for our Tole Park. And so Sean Jerry was the burn boss in charge. And thanks to John and really their collaborative effort as well. Our parks team, we had about 10 internal staff with parks that was able to tie in with CAL FIRE and help in ignitions and holding and control line work on this fire. So we burned about 150 acres of grassland, and our control lines were 2 different roads on either side, and then we put in mow lines along kind of the northern and southern boundaries. And last year, we burned about 80 acres over in this area, this northwestern area. So Tole is a really great park to apply fire. It's mostly a grassland environment, has heavy thatch buildup. And so down here in this kind of locator map on the left-hand side, you can see the green outline of Tole. And so last year we burned up over here. This year we did 150 acres, and really we're just going to move through the park using fire as a primary tool. And every time we use fire, and really anything that we do out at Tole Ranch, we are co-managing with the Federated Indians of Grant and Rancheria. And so all of this is planned in coordination, in co-management with them. So really a great opportunity to move the ball forward using prescribed fire over a larger landscape area. Moving on to a recent burn that we did was our Monterey Redwoods Park, located just south of the town of Monterey. And this blue hatched outline is our shaded fuel break that was funded by the State Coastal Conservancy. So down over here in this kind of lower left-hand corner is where we had a road system that was moving up an elevation that made it all the way up to the top ridge, which is right up over here. And so with that funding in 2023, we're able to put in about 24 acres of shaded fuel break. That was to reduce fuels along this road, which is an access point to this upper ridge, so that CAL FIRE has access to that ridge in case of a wildfire, but then also to use that shaded fuel break to build burn units off of. So we put in the shaded fuel break, clearing or thinning everywhere from 100 to 50 feet off of the road. We created about 1,100 burn piles, and we burned about 1,000 of those prior to actually doing a prescribed fire. So that was all prep in a prescribed fire. The colored polygons are the 3 different burn units that we did. And so this bluish burn unit is kind of on the upper ridge. And so we started off in the morning burning this upper polygon and then moving down slope, ending the day with burning this lower polygon. And altogether we burned about 35 acres. This is a Doug fir redwood forest of extremely high fuel loads. Even though we created all of those pile burns and burned those off prior, there was still a lot of down dead woody material, primarily from really the lack of 120 years of wildfire moving through here, but also a lot of dead and down town oaks from sudden oak death. And this was led by Marshall Tuberville, CAL FIRE Battalion Chief, and we have a vegetation management plan with CAL FIRE. And so Marshall led the charge to be able to burn through these different units throughout the day. Really, there was a whole CAL FIRE army up there. The fuel loads were so heavy. We got really good consumption. Ryan talked a little bit about if you wait too long, you kind of miss that window. And of course, Marshall with his sixth sense of knowing when and when not to burn, we were able to time this at a great time where really a lot of the fuels were dry enough to carry the ground fuel through the units using backing fire. We got really good consumption of material. And not only did they bring a whole army of CAL FIRE staff out there, but they used about 2 miles of hose lay along our control lines. And so our control lines consisted of roads where they occurred along this blue hatched area. But then we also put in control lines along old skid roads that are throughout this property, because of course it was logged, commercially logged for many decades. And so we put our control lines through using these old skid roads, clearing that material, and getting down to bare mineral soil. So that was a huge success out there. And we just finished burning additional burn piles in the lower portion of this property that we didn't burn off, that were still there. So we just burned those off actually earlier this week. And so thanks to CAL FIRE and Marshall for making this possible. In the future, we plan to set up more burn units along the southern boundary of the property. And so again, you can kind of see some of these old skid roads. We'll be using those as control lines as we do a lot of burn prepping and getting ready to burn off these areas. And so that was Monterey Redwoods. Moving over to our most recent burn was over at Carrington Ranch out on the coast. And we were able to burn about 7.5 to 8 acres. The burn units are here in these kind of black hatched areas. This was an old farm field as part of the old historic ranch. And so that was being encroached upon by coyote brush, had a heavy thatch buildup of velvet grass as well. So it was really ready for some fire to move through there. To prep for this, we did some thinning of this kind of historic Monterey cypress grove that's there. And so we thinned that out, burned probably about 200 piles last year just to prep the control lines. And then the control lines consisted of trails that are through there, but then also we did mow lines in the grasslands. And so then we were able to burn off about 7.5 acres out on the coast. Again, good timing out on the coast. You can have heavy fog and a lot of condensation. But for the most part, the fuels were dry and really receptive where we could put down some spots in the fire, and that would be a nice backing fire that moved through the units quite nicely. And so then we plan to, can set up more burn units throughout this property. It's primarily grassland with coyote brush encroaching upon it, and it does have a heavy thatched layer of velvet grass. And so this is really a good candidate for using prescribed fire. And then soon we'll be following up with implementing a grazing management plan out here on Carrington Ranch. And so that's pretty much it for me. Let's see if I can stop sharing here. And I just want to say that, internally, Regional Parks has been working over the last couple of years to build up an internal crew to do forestry and fuels reduction. And so this is the second fall winter season where we've had that crew returning to do this work. And a lot of those folks were actually trained up through the Santa Rosa JC Wildfire Resilience Program. And so that program is able to give hands-on experience to students on how to use chainsaws, how to do fuel reduction, build and burn piles, and even do prescribed fire. And so when we hire them onto our staff, they're really ready to hit the ground running. And it really makes us very effective out on the ground. And so we have this internal staff to do a lot of this work. We have a burn boss on staff and soon to be 2 burn bosses. And so really throughout our park system, we are working on developing prescribed fire plans so that depending on the weather and the season, we're able to either burn maybe on the east part of the county, if it's kind of wet on the west, or if it's too dry, we can burn on the west side of the county in our different parks. So really working to line up all these burn plans throughout our parks that need prescribed fire. So burn plans, smoke management plans, so that when the conditions present themselves, we're able to kind of quickly pivot and start to implement these fires out on the ground. And so that's what we're doing at regional parks. And I think we have almost an endless amount of pile burns that we'll be doing probably throughout the winter. I would say 5+ parks throughout the winter. So that's it from regional parks.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Brooke. That was a great presentation. Probably the first question I wanted to throw out at you is, you have a real interface between the vineyards and Shiloh Regional Park, and that's been on the docket to try to burn. Was that another example of the complaints about smoke taint and not being able to carry that off, or was that just postponed for this year?
It was postponed primarily because of weather. We chose to do the Carrington burn before Shiloh.
Right.
And so, I think this year with the grapes, it seems like it was a normal harvest schedule. Last year, we had a really cold winter and spring, and so that kind of delayed harvest, and that's a lot of the challenges that we saw. This year, it seemed like the harvest occurred at the normal time, and a lot of the grapes near Shiloh had been harvested, and so we were ready to burn. We just kind of ran out of time. The rains came in a little too quickly. That said, we have reached out to the vineyard managers in and around Shiloh just to do any kind of PR that we need to do and give them a heads up when we are moving forward with a prescribed fire. For the most part, adjacent vineyard managers to Shiloh understand what we're doing, and we haven't seen a whole lot of pushback from them. So at least there are some folks out there that understand what we're doing and are supportive of our program.
Fantastic. I really appreciate that. Let me see. Does anybody else have any quick questions for Brooke on that presentation? All right, that was excellent. I really appreciate it, Brooke. I really enjoyed the hearing about Monterey and having the shitted fuel break established first as your kind of the anchor of all your burn units. That seems like a really logical way to go about it. So that was excellent. Jill, go ahead.
Brooke, I didn't catch if you said what your total acres burned was.
For this year, it was over 300 acres altogether.
Thank you.
That sounds great. And great. Thank you very much, Brooke. Really appreciate it. Now going to Marshall Tuberville. Could you introduce yourself and let us know what you do?
Yeah, so Marshall Tuberville, I don't know if my microphone's better now, but I'll have a PowerPoint. Battalion Chief with CAL FIRE. I do a bunch of other stuff too, but for this meeting, CAL FIRE, and you guys have probably already heard a lot about some of the collaboration we've done. So I'll just I'm going to pick it up midsummer just to kind of put some context into it. And then, am I the last presenter? I got about 10 minutes. I can try to time it for that. Is that good?
Yeah, you're doing great. We have about 10 minutes. This is exactly right. Actually, we have about 20. We have some questions at the end, probably.
Yeah, so I think my themes are gonna be there's almost no perfect burn day, and we sometimes think we should have burned yesterday. And then what we're all seeing in this fall burn window, if you want to call it that, which lasted basically October 21st through about November 19th, we're all trying to burn at the same time, and it comes down to resources, smoke, and the weather conditions. So just the more we can plan and collaborate, the better. So that's kind of going to be my underlying theme. So coming out of spring, going into summer, CAL FIRE is a fire department, so it's all about the fires. And you can see in 2024 with the Point Fire in Sonoma County, and then also with a larger fire over by Sites, we were at a record pace. And so that really curtailed back a lot of our burning and firefight availability. And then all these statistics start popping up. And this is some of the trends and things that I talked about in the preseason meeting. I'm not going to go into the graphs a lot, but just that green line is projected, blue is the current year. All these trends going high on the right graph to the right, meaning extreme or above. And then the blue and green line in the lower left is our big fuels, our logs that are drying out, going down low. So these trends don't look favorable. When I say I want to burn on July 2nd, they're like, what are you talking about? We're at record level setting. And that's a PR thing. That's also just a conflict within the fire service. So, we got the fires in Napa County on a red flag day. Butte County has the first. They also had the park fire, and so it starts pulling people away. Alerts come out like this. Yeah, we're all doing great burning grass, and we know the grass is burning well. Like we knew the grass burned well on half a canoe on June 14th. And why it burned 2 days later on June 16th on the point fire. Well, now somebody comes out and tells us, yeah, the grass is dry and there's a lot more tons per acre. Yeah, if you're doing prescribed burning, if you're managing land, you know that. But this comes out to the firefighters. So here's the park fire, which ate up firefighters for a lot of the summer and took away some of what I want to do is summertime burning where we can, but I don't have the firefighters to do it. We were literally leaving stations uncovered, unstaffed in Sonoma County to support these fires in other parts of the state. So that's just what happens, aircraft, all the statistics, bad fire season. Here's how it all looked. I'm just setting the stage for fall because I believe we should be burning year round, seizing opportunities. We don't need to burn huge acreages, but all these things work against me within the fire service. So I would have loved to kick off the fall season at our first rains, which are mid-August. We had all the firefighters back. We had low fire risk, but now we're going up against primarily the grape industry. And also this message about year-round fire season. But here's a day by our own statistics, you can't even have a fire. Ignition components 0 across 6 counties. Granted, it's at 9 in the morning, but what I'm getting at is we're losing opportunities. But you heard about Ryan in state parks, and he didn't also mention Sarah Gibson there coming back is in the upper right as a state burn boss. But we were able to get one in. I think my date might be wrong, Ryan. It might be September 13th. But this was supposed to kick off a bunch of burning that we were going to try to do. And really, we did this one, and then we had to take a pause for about a month because CAL FIRE made some arrangements with the wine industry, grape industry, that basically prevented us from doing a lot of burning, and then the weather. So indices, you see them now, they're going in our favor. They're going down. The general downward trend, the ending of fire season is the great time to do burning in the fall. Yeah, we're going to get occasional heat. That doesn't help us unless you're trying to burn right after it, like you heard about from Brooke. And I'm going to talk about the Yorty Creek burning after a red flag. We're just trying to seize opportunities. So I kind of joke with firefighters sometimes. It'd be great if we could just camp out on the land and just seize moments to do burning. And that's kind of what the Stockoff was with Ryan. But you still got to conform to permitting, smoke management, burn hours, PIO stuff. If we could just light whenever we wanted to light, it'd be so much more easy to do and nimble. And I know I'm government. I know I'm saying this stuff, but the more we can get to that point, I think it'd make us a lot more effective because we just would seize opportunities and be very nimble. So other units, they started burning. This is the Santa Clara unit, Ed Orr, great forester down there in Santa Clara. They're starting to burn and I'm getting jealous. I'm like, why can't we burn in the North Bay? So Santa Clara unit's burning, San Mateo, Santa Cruz is burning, Mendocino County's burning, and they're burning good sized acreages. And it took a while for Sonoma County to get on board, at least from a fire agency point of view. The trends, went up a little bit as expected. We get a couple days of drying. Fires can happen. Things dry out. We get some red flags thrown in there, which that's sometimes conflicting messaging about when we can burn and when we can't, but it's not red flag on the coast right now, but there's no way in heck I can pull off a burn because everyone thinks we're in a red flag. So this is some of the conflicts we got. And then you got record setting stuff, the 97th, which means roughly less than 3% of the time are the indices ever greater than this. So I can't go burn on a day like this knowing these indices. And that's out there amongst the firefighters too. So you heard about Tilley from Brooke Regional Parks. We partner with Brooke at Monterey Redwoods, State Parks at Salt Point. This is something cool I saw come out from 2 of our 5 supervisors right after Monterey Redwoods. So I'm really glad. I don't know if you guys can read this, but Supervisor Gore and Hopkins are backing us up, the folks that are doing burning, about basically telling folks get used to it. And the alternative's a lot worse. And my argument is, why are you trying to stop me from doing a natural process? You should be trying to stop me and Ryan from dripping diesel and gasoline in a state park. Let us just go burning and let it burn when it wants to burn than trying to use illegal or not illegal, but using hazardous materials to burn. But no one looks at it that way. So I'm hoping that over time, this messaging can make people a lot more understanding. And so my motive is if someone wants to burn, I'm going to find a way. And the more we can have redundancies where CAL FIRE can be the burn boss, regional parks can be the burn boss, we can share personnel, whatever it is, we have a way to get it done so we don't get hung up in each of our silos, if you will. So this is an example. A private ranch owner says, hey, it's going to rain in a couple days. Can I go light my field on fire? And this is a ranch owner I've worked with a lot. We've actually done government-led burning on his property. I'm like, yeah, I wish you would have told me a day before so I could have some time to work on this. But we pushed through an air quality, pushed through a smoke management plan, pushed through a CAL FIRE burn permit, and he probably burned 75 plus acres by himself right ahead of a known rain event. And he's going to do this again in a couple more weeks and get 200 plus acres. We don't even know what he burned because he never mapped it. He just lit it and walked away with half a drip torch. So we partnered on the stock off complex as Ryan presented. I think that was a different way of burning, if you will, something I'd like to do a much more of, where we just let fire do its thing and we're kind of there, but we're not fully staffing it like everyone thinks we should be doing. We're just being safe about it, and we're softening the burn boundaries. We attempted another park. This was not my involvement, but a pig fight in Trail Annandale. And that was some prep work that had been done with piles ahead of time, but it just wouldn't burn. We waited too long. And so that's kind of a failure, if you will, or just we're not going to be able to burn some of these plots because of the windows of opportunities we have until we get, I'm going to say the big thing is society, until we get society to change. Okay. I saw Kelly and Harlan on the call. I don't know if they're still there, but this was a deal where we're able to partner in a VTP covered area, no agreement with CAL FIRE technically. So a private burn boss, just like the Hillside Ranch, we came and helped burn piles. And that's an opportunity. That's something by the law, CAL FIRE should be doing, called an assist. And so we're getting more of that in place. So this was a good day, about 7 acres of pile burning with the Oddfellows that was covered in a VTP. Here's the trend lines. Not going to spend too much time, but large fuels drying, fire danger going up, fire risk going up. Another red flag. I didn't like this red flag. I don't think it should have been a red flag. It set us back, but coming right out of the red flag, saved the redwoods, private contractor, able to get some burning done. The neat thing about this, untold story, I think it should be highlighted, is Monday of this same week, they tried to burn and they couldn't get anything to burn, or they got very limited. Now, if they would have called Ryan or I, who were at the stock off, we probably could have told them that. I had to convince CAL FIRE management, like, I would be surprised if they even get anything burning. Let's let them burn. Who cares if it's a red flag tomorrow? They got the staffing, they can do it. Well, they couldn't even get it to burn. They come back after the red flag and they're able to pull it off. All about the timing. They couldn't burn before the red flag, right after they could burn. This is why I wish this red flag would have never happened. It took 2 or 3 days of good burning away from us. We do the same thing as CAL FIRE. Red flag ends at 7. I talked CAL FIRE to let me burn that morning at 9 a.m. So because we're a fire department, we got a copter, we got boats. We did about 420 acres. Not all of it burned great. The north aspect didn't burn. The shaded areas didn't burn, but we gave it our best effort. And we only had about 3 to 4 hours that we could even get stuff to burn. And then it pretty much stopped. And this was done with the Army Corps as a land manager here. About 420 acres we're calling treated. And so we're bringing out everything to try to get this stuff done. I know there's been a lot of things people talking about, but this is one of the things, how firefighters think and how I have to talk to firefighters. And what I've been telling firefighters with this photo is, on the right is the black oak. I get mistletoe, it's probably not the healthiest. On the left is the Douglas fir. Same day, same weather, same aspect, same grass underneath it. How our black oaks burn different than the Douglas fir, and how the encroachment of Douglas fir, you guys all know this, is changing how things burn. So these are the opportunities I'm trying to get firefighters to understand the why they can maybe work past 8 p.m., work when it's dark, come out early, believe in it, look at their ignitions, and get more land treated properly with natural historical type fire. So I just want to highlight too, I'm trying to get private landowners to burn as much as they can. So Hillside Ranch, Sheep Proposed Ridge, we send a couple fire trucks out to help burn about 30 acres of timber understory right before rain. So we're doing whatever we can do. Pepperwood, you heard about, not going to cover it. Hillside's back at it. He calls me, this was a bad one. He called me the same day and says, Marshall, can I go burn today? I'm like, well, yeah, anybody can burn. You want to break the law, that's on you. But we're able to push it through. He burned the next day, and this is the one. He lit off 200 plus acres. That was his last count before it started raining. And in that photo from Pole Mountain, apologize for the porta potty burned over. I'm not or blown over. I'm not responsible for that. But at least I don't think I am. It shows you from in the morning till the rain event in the evening, which was about 5:11 that Saturday night, that Sunday. So we don't even know the acres burned because he never went back and mapped it. The roads are muddy. I'm partnering with, we're trying to partner with anybody. This is Mendocino Redwood Company. They logged an area up in Annapolis, got the permits, they could burn their slash. Yeah, they wanted to get 30 to 50 acres. They didn't have tons of firefighter involvement, but they did get quite a bit done. And this is the stuff most of Sonoma County's not seeing, because just like the Hillside Ranch, it's in a remote area, but we're getting some acreage treated through all of these types of leveraged partnerships. Private landowner, same thing. This is a firefighter calls me and says, hey, can I burn brush grass? He had all the permits. I'm like, yeah, go give it a shot. Well, he couldn't even get the brush to burn, but he got all the grass around his cabin burned up top of Pine Flat Road. So whatever opportunity, and I could, talk about ecology and everything else here, but trying to get fire back on the land. So these are the indices just last Saturday. You can see things are about average right now. We go back and burn some piles with Brooke, get out and try to burn some stuff with Sonoma Land Trust with Chris and Joe. And then Jason Wells and I, we proved that the prescribed burn season is over. This past Tuesday, we tried to go burn on a shaded fuel break that the RCD's doing, and we proved it. And this was another opportunity where we partnered with the RCD, partnered with the contractor to the RCD. This was on Sonoma Land Trust property. So we're trying to mix all these things up to try to make it to work. And this actually probably, I don't know how much Jason Wells wants me to talk about this, probably worked against us, that we couldn't be nimble. So we missed the window, and now it's not going to happen because the funding's over, but it is what it is. And that's all I got. So I tried to keep it in 10, throwing out a lot of different stuff for you guys, but never great opportunities. But you just got to take advantage of them when we can. And the more we can work together, share resources, be nimble, pre-plan, do all our burn plans now so we can get after it when the opportunity arises. And I believe we should be burning year round. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, Marshall, really appreciate that. Kelly and Harlan, do you want to comment about the pile burn workshop that you guys hosted?
Sure. The pile burn went very, very well. We had a 6.5 acre area that was totally cut and stacked and piled nice and neatly. And Devin and Marshall came out and showed us how CAL FIRE burns versus how a private landowner can burn. That was very interesting. We got a little bit of piles burnt up on the hillside as well, which was great to get rid of that fuel. So we introduced fire to the Oddfellows community, which has always been a very scary topic to discuss within our park. And we have 336 acres in there. So this was the beginning of fire being reintroduced to our property. Very, very excited. Thank you so much, Devin and Marshall and the Hilton crew for assisting and monitoring the fire after the fire as well. This was just a big learning curve for our community. And the goal that we have is we implemented the Southside Russian River fuel break up on the ridge line. We also put a calming zone around our cabins below, and we're hoping to actually use fire to burn between the two areas in the future. So that is a big goal that we have. We also had the workshop that was hosted by Cal Poly and the RCD, which was a great workshop that we had showing all different methods that we've used on fuel reduction. So we showed calming zone, the shaded fuel break. We also did a grazing area, and we showed people defensible space in a cabin environment. And that was, I felt the workshop was well received, and I hope we can do more of those types of workshops to introduce all these concepts to our community.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kelly, for that and for hosting the workshops. I think my visual of that day was Devin getting cranked up on his pile burn workshop to a number of different community members who came out that day, and Marshall and his team just burning like hell all over the hillside, and Devin trying to stop. Wait, save those piles. I need to use those for the workshop. So that was pretty classic collaboration. But again, these are our community members becoming more familiar, becoming more comfortable with the use of fire in a very positive way. So I can't express my gratitude for the type of work that you all are doing. I think this session in itself represents an amazing description of all the work that's going on by the different organizations, between nonprofit organizations, public agencies, and we all got to figure out a way to get it done. So I think after this little rain happens, let's get out there again, folks, and start burning. Let's follow Marshall's lead and burn the hell out of things. So thank you. Adriana, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question. I don't know if anyone has been counting up the acres during all these presentations. I did not, but I was wondering if you all, anyone who burned this year, this recent season, if you could type in the chat the number of acres that you burned across your properties or that you assisted with. Could be an estimate. Like Marshall, I know you might not have perfect acres for some of those private landowners, but I think it'd be fun to add it all up.
I'm confident that Rose is tracking it, and I also have the numbers. So if people want to put their numbers in, that'd be great. But thank you for that. Marshall, yeah, keep counting. I want to see your numbers.
Yeah, we did some burning in spring too, remember? So it'd be the whole totality, but yeah, it was probably over at, remember we're double counting too, right? Because I partnered with pretty much everyone in this meeting today. So we got to make sure that we don't double count as well. Yeah.
And I'll follow up with Fire Forward to get an accurate count of their numbers as well. Jason, do you have anything you want to share as far as the experience on Pine Flat and Briggs Ranch?
In terms of like this year or overall? I mean, just this year.
Just overall, and what's your hopes for, what was the objective and what is the hope from here?
Well, the objective was to install a shaded fuel brake system that ran from, Pine Flat Road to a private road system off Briggs Ranch, which we did. I would say that overall it's a success. The area has been lop and scattered. It's ready to receive prescribed fire on all the properties. So there were 3 different landowners that were involved. The only one that we were going back on this year was Sonoma Land Trust. Everywhere else we did that last year, and it looks really good. At this point, what also was really nice was because of the work that we did, a lot of the neighbors saw what was going on, so they ended up contracting with the contractor that we had been working with out there. So he ended up going out and doing a bunch of like hazard tree removal and more prescribed fire work, just privately funded from the people who are out there. And the other thing is that now there's actually the road system is connected. So we did a little bit of road repair, and you can get, in addition to the fact that this would just be an easy area now for, say, during a wildfire, you could do an aerial attack, but also there's access now. Like you could actually get a truck from one side to the next, and we could be doing prescribed fire off of that ridge now that it's been prepped moving into the future. So all in all, I'd say it was a really good starter. And we're working with some of the neighbors that are in that area, and hopefully we'll be putting in more shaded fuel brakes in the future. So
it's really encouraging to see, because I think through the various VTPs that have been completed through Marshall's program and a variety of other regional parks, of course, ag and open space, we've got a nice network of VTPs completed. So the environmental compliance is done. Now it's a matter of like getting the treatments done on the ground. So we got the north side shaded fuel break coming up. We have a number of these different areas where, similar to what Brooke had shared with us, is we can anchor off of those burn units that would be able to sustain these treatments. So one of the biggest challenges, and everyone's raised it, is that once we do a fuel treatment, how the hell do we continue to maintain it? If you can use prescribed fire on those treated areas, it's gonna be a hell of a lot more or less expensive than doing a hand crew every time you get in on those sites. So again, trying to create those different burn units and pods that CAL FIRE and different organizations have been able to support. I think that's one of the tickets we have to be able to think about a comprehensive effort throughout Sonoma County. That's what Permit Sonoma, Ag and Open Space, all the different entities who are trying to work on this. We have the disadvantage of so much land covered by private land ownership. So if we can try to use the different entities that are on this call, including Brook, regional parks, state parks, Pepperwood, SLT, we have great examples. And so we just have to get people involved so they see the difference of doing prescribed burn at a scale that's going to be meaningful and ultimately protect these communities that are so vulnerable. So with that, we are at time. Does anybody have any other comments that they want to share? And keep it to 30 seconds. Go ahead, Kelly.
I want to thank everybody that's been funding some of these projects and the grant funds that have been dedicated to our areas, because it is helping us spread the news in a positive way instead of it being about just money, which is very difficult to get from communities. They're afraid, and this is helping us reintroduce all of these good practices back into our area. So thank you very much to everybody who's helping with funding.
Fantastic. All right, folks, with that, I bid you farewell. Thank you for participating on this rainy day. Make sure you don't float away, and we'll see you next month. Thanks a lot for your help.
Thank you for hosting.
All right, have a good one.
Is the end. Leave.